Our next presentation is by Al. As I said, Al is working with us at the Tourist Board, and 6 months ago we brought him on board and asked him to go out and find out what the market thinks about the BVI and its products and its branding, and he's done some work, come back, and we, the board, has given him the green light to move ahead with it. So we're anxious to hear what he's going to say. Al?
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate the opportunity. Well, like everybody else, Russell twisted our arms to get us down here and asked us a few questions to discuss. And just by way of background, our company actually represents about 12 different tourist boards in the US, as well as working with cruise lines and airlines, and we're 100% travel and dedicated to that in LA and New York. So just as a point of reference, the questions are about the luxury market, and then we'll have a second part to my presentation too. So what drives the luxury market? And Bill and I think, are on the same line on several different ideas. But it's experiences. It's not the physical destination. It's the experience. It's what that person brings back with them and how they felt going there and coming back. One of the things we found in our research is when people look at their travel experience, it's broken down into several different parts. The first part is probably 40% of the experience, and that's the anticipation. And that's when you have to talk to them about the experience and get them excited. If you tell people, oh, you can go anywhere you want tomorrow, oh, I'm not ready. They need that conversation. 20% is actually being there, because it always takes a long time to get there, and then you get there and you have a great time. But then the other 40% is when they go back and they tell everybody. And we need that echo. And I challenge everybody as a starter to figure out how you're getting that echo from your clients. Just expecting them to go back home and saying, oh, I went to a great place, isn't good enough. We have to push more, and they have to talk about that experience from that side. I think we're using the same terminology. It's that once-in-a-lifetime experience. Nobody wants a tan anymore from their trip. They want a badge. They want that thing that they can go out and say, look what I did that nobody else did. And they put their badge on when they're still in the destination. It's just called Facebook now. They can't wait to post it and show that they did something that nobody else did. And the way it's promoted helps a lot. Last year I was on a safari in Africa, and I was a guest of the safari camp, and the gentleman one night after we had a great safari, he says, you know, we saw that lion. We usually don't go out after dinner, but would anybody want to go after dinner? Yes, can I hold the light? I can't wait. Went out, saw the lion, fantastic. Went back and talked to my host a few days later who runs the safari companies in Kenya, and I said, it was such a treat. For some reason, he decided to go out after 9 o'clock. And he says, yeah, they do that every third night. But it works for me, and I posted it. And it was that special once-in-a-lifetime experience. So there's a lot to be said about that, and how it's presented and what's presented from that side too. I do love it when you go into a hotel and they say, oh, we've upgraded you. Yeah, fantastic, to a deluxe room. Yeah, fantastic. You have no idea what a deluxe room is. You got an extra towel, but you feel good going in. What are some of the emerging opportunities? The holistic experience. The spa business has gone so high and high and high that there's hotels now saying, what's the revenue I can get from one room and somebody staying overnight in that room? And what's the revenue I can get from 12 spa treatments in a day from that same room? Let's take the beds out and put the spa treatment in, and we're going to make more revenue. Last year, spa outpaced golf for revenue on travel. So it's a big part of it, and once again, it brings somebody back to something. And it's not just the massage, it's the whole holistic thing. It's the food included. It's everything else that's part of that experience for them too. It's over a $400 million industry in the US. Okay, the other opportunities, and especially when we thought about BVI, is extending the length of stay. We work with places like Hawaii and Fiji and things, and BVI is a prime example. we're not going to get that much more lift into the destination that quickly. So then you look at your COA, your cost of acquisition. How much did it cost for me to get this person to BVI? If I can get them to stay one more night, it's probably not a 15% increase, it's a 20% increase, it's a 30% increase. Just as a point of reference, the safari camps, to get somebody to say 3 nights to 4 nights, that 4th night increases their profit margin 50% when they look at their cost of acquisition. So that's something I think in BVI that we have to look at to see how we can do that and extend that. The other thing, and I have to admit, BVI does a good job on getting direct business. When we talk about the travel industry, there are so many people in between the consumer and the end product. The travel agents, who quite often do a great job, the wholesalers, the tour operators inbound, and then the product. When the reality comes, if we're talking economics, the more direct business, where the consumer's booking directly with the property, the more money that actually comes into BVI. If half of your business is taken up through wholesalers, 20% of that money is staying in the US or in Europe or wherever it happens to be. If we can keep pushing for that direct business, that money ends up on the islands instead of somewhere else, and that's an important part. Globally competitive. I can't emphasize this enough. You can't perform to standards, you have to perform above standards. The competitive market right now is so intense. And I want to challenge everybody, because I've heard a lot of times, well, what about the US Virgin Islands? What about the Bahamas? What about Cuba? I'm going to throw in, what about Thailand? What about Bali? What about all these international destinations who are marketing out there, and that product level and that service level is at another standard? You know, we always look and we say there's a difference between friendly staff, good service, and hospitality. The first two you see, that hospitality you feel. And it means I'm happy that you're here and I want to be a part of your experience. Getting that one-off experience again, the way it's marketed has such an impact. The off-season community initiatives, the things that we were talking about, like the festivals and things like that, are so important. Getting there, and what I mean getting there is not just the flight, but arrival. That sense of arrival when you come here, if everything goes through customs and immigration, you're already feeling better. Did I touch a little? I'll just move on. And then there's so what we have here, business conference opportunities, and that's going to go into the seasonality question. Look at this facility. There's a lot of business opportunities that you can get during what was called off-season, which should never be a word in the travel industry. There should not be an off-season. People want to travel 12 months a year, 365 days a year. You should have that service available for them. Culinary tourism has become a bigger and bigger market where people are going just to go to different restaurants and try different food. It's so important from that perspective too. The cultural tourism, why should I come here as to another island? It's got to be that experience and with those people. I mentioned wellness, and I wanted to talk about themed events too. But I want to spend just a few minutes on the seasonality part of it. Look at some of the places. Bill mentioned there's some other small places. I was just in South Africa in Stellenbosch in the wine region. They used to have their off-season until they decided we can build restaurants at the wineries and people can actually come year-round just to come to the restaurant. And in a sense, they took their little B&Bs and their summer things and they just said, they made a mental shift from cool, crisp, white wines in the summer to reds in front of fireplaces in the winter. And they made that psychological shift and said, there's no reason we can't stay open 12 months a year. Switzerland, just like Colorado, said, now we need to get people there in the summer. 80% of their marketing money in the US is spent for summer travel. They know they have the winter travel. They don't need that. They need to increase on the summer too. And as we heard from Disney, one of my favorites, and I live in Southern California, they have 2 bad months. They're October, early November. What do? They offer 25% discount if you live in Southern California, up to 6 tickets. So you can bring your friends from the cold Midwest or the East or wherever it happens to be. Perfect marketing. So instead of them saying, well, people aren't going to come a long distance, but they will come a short distance. And what happens is Southern Californians call their friends and say, why don't you come out in October? We can get discounted tickets. So they motivate the market. So for those couple months where a few of you seem to close because the weather in the Caribbean, let's think about the other people in the Caribbean who could come here during those 2 months who are in the same weather situation but have a reason to try something they couldn't because the prices were so high, and now it's become affordable. The market's not just long haul, the market's the neighborhood too, and I don't think anybody would mind getting some of the money from the other islands.
No.
So I think we need to look at that. I mean, just one more comment on seasonality. I'm an entrepreneur. I struggle all the time that the machines we have are only used 8 to 10 hours a day. I wish they were used 12 hours a day or 15 hours a day. I saw a presentation from Zipcar. It's a great concept where you use somebody else's car because the woman realized that 85% of the time you don't use your car and somebody else can use your car. Imagine if I owned a factory and I said, I've got a factory, it's open 12 months a year, but I only use it 10 months a year. I don't know, somebody on the board would say, wait, that's not right. We're paying 12 and we're only using 10? Yet some of the properties here have that philosophy. We can make it a 12-month business, and we don't need that much more money to change that into the marketing of the 12-month business. Okay. Now, I get to break from all these presentations and do a quote-unquote commercial break. As Russell said, I get to break up the afternoon and deter a little from all the philosophies and analysts and get to introduce you to the BVI new brand that's coming along. And as a way of background, as Russell said, we did some research. First, we looked and said, why a new direction? Well, it had been 6 years since there had been anything new from the advertising. Nature's Little Secrets has been around for 18 years. It's a great brand positioning, but it's still got untapped potential. We wanted to strengthen and clarify that, and we wanted to establish the brand and distinguish it from the competitors that are out there. So the first thing we did was take our process, which is the competitive analysis, and we did limit it to the local competitive analysis, do some research and insights with consumers and travel agents, and then define the positioning too. So first the competitive analysis, and we did go to the neighborhood and see what everybody else is doing in the neighborhood too. And this is a good one for all of you who live down here. These are the islands I just spoke of. Beautiful by nature, tranquility wrapped in blue, simply beautiful, one happy island. The beach is just the beginning. Can you know which ones go with which islands? Maybe. And you live here, okay? But one of the things we noticed about all these positionings is they described the physical place. It wasn't what I got out of it. It was the place where I was going to visit. And that's not the best way when you're talking about vacations. Whoops. But Nature's Little Secret describes the benefit and the experience. The benefit of coming to BVI is I get Nature's Little Secret. The benefit is the experience I get here, and it's the experience I can take home. And I get to keep that secret. So we then took a little look, and we went out and interviewed consumers, people who've been to BVI and people who were predisposed to go to BVI. And there were some interesting things. Whoops. 43% of the consumers has household incomes over $200,000. I want to live in that neighborhood. Less than 5% of the population of the U.S. has household incomes of over $200,000. So you see who we're talking to. We're talking to the creme de la creme. And that means they have wealth and they're affluent individuals. And that's meaningful to us. Whoops, go back one. 7 out of 10 had been to Mexico, and 35% had been to the South Pacific. Nationally, only 2% of the American population has been to the South Pacific. We know this is not their first trip. These are experienced travelers. They're sophisticated travelers. This is not necessarily nouveau riche. It's people who've been out there and know what they're doing. No big surprise, 60% favored natural beauties and water activities. So they want to be a little experiential, and they're active travelers. They want to go out and do something. This was the most staggering thing I've seen in our years of working with the destination. 90% of the people who come to BVI are repeat. You guys should just have your backs up and your shoulders stretched, because that's a damn good statistic. Okay? You just don't see that. I bet Disney would like that, and they don't even have it. So the fact that there's this loyalty is a really strong attribute for BVI. They're willing to go the extra mile. Let's face it, it's not the easiest place to go to. So if I went through all those steps and I had such a good time, I'm willing to come back, that makes a strong statement. And this was really interesting. Only 1% considered name brand hotels important to them. It goes back to, I think, some of the stuff that Bill was talking about. It's not the names. I don't need the Ritz-Carlton. I don't need the Four Seasons. I need that experience. And I also think what's happened is this is probably the TripAdvisor effect. If I'm going to come to BVI and I look and there's a Ritz-Carlton and I look at TripAdvisor and the response is, it's okay. And then I look at Four Seasons, the response, it's okay. But then I see Russell's Inn. And much to my surprise, all the responses, 5, 5+, love it, Russell knows what he's doing, so on and so forth. What do? I pass on the Four Seasons, and I pass on the Ritz-Carlton, and I go to Russell's. There's also kind of a cachet of this place isn't overbuilt. It's not for tourists, it's for travelers. And that makes a big difference. And quite frankly, when I come down here, it's just for me. And that's what I want, and that's the experience I want. So with that, our positioning was to find that middle ground. There, the BVI traveler finds the secrets that match up with the BVI offerings. And once they have that, they have their ultimate experience for it. So our brand positioning is really, BVI is an understated destination that offers independent-minded travelers, natural beauties, unpretentious attitudes, and relaxing activities while preserving nature's little secrets. And just a few of those key words, they're independent-minded people. They are not those who are going with the masses. And we don't necessarily want those going with the masses. And I think the other thing that's so important is this unpretentious attitude. It reflects not only the travelers who come to BVI, but the people in BVI. And the attitude and the atmosphere is what we keep calling it's an untucked luxury. It's unpretentious. You know what you have. And you know, it's always great when you talk to somebody who's comfortable in their own skin. And that's what you feel about BVI. So with that all, we've kept this new positioning and this new tagline that we've introduced that some of you have seen a sneak preview, because it is so wonderful to have. When I come to BVI, I'm going to keep it to yourself. It's what you experience, but quite frankly, I'm not sure I want to tell everybody else about it. So when we think about it, when we looked at it, it is this untucked luxury. Let's keep it to ourselves. It's pushing off that natural beauty in the certain places that BVI has to offer. It's the relaxing activities that you want to go do, but you're not going to run back and tell all your friends. You might say, I've been to the Caribbean, and that would be it. So this is a few of our assets. We were lucky enough to come down and do a great photo shoot. We have, I can't even remember, 75 different photographs, which we'll be able to use across all assets, from the websites to the advertising. Then this is just a few of them. We'll be able to put them in different mediums depending on the niche markets. If it's romance for honeymoon and weddings, if it's traditional, if it's affluent, whatever it happens to be, we'll be able to certainly go around from that side. We also have some online advertising too that still pays off this. Let's keep it to ourselves throughout the whole thing. It'll be integrated into the social media that we do. So it's kind of fun that everybody's saying, we need to tweet this and we need to do this, and we're kind of saying, no, we'll just keep it to ourselves. Thank you very much. Because that's what the clients want, and that's what we want from that side too. That all said, every once in a while we get lucky and we get some space in Times Square, and we'd love to do this, but I'm not going to tell anybody when. So you can see the whole selection of creative that we've developed for it. And the good, exciting news is we'll be launching it in March in New York. But until then, I'd ask for you to keep it to yourself. So thank you.